Om Shuklam Varadaram Vishnu Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavartanam Dhyaye Sarvavighnopashantaye Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. So we were at the 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha kuru nandana bahushakha hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So vyavasayatmika buddhihi eka iha kuru nandana bahushakha hi anantaha cha buddhayaha avyavasayina. So here, as Sri Krishna continues, he introduces this term, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi. So he says, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi. So it's a particular frame of thinking, of mind, which indicates a clear understanding. Vyavasayatmika Buddhi is clear understanding. Avyavasayina is not clear understanding. So buddhi, which is confused. So a mind or an intellect which has clear knowledge, clear understanding, as opposed to one that is confused. So he says here, eka buddhi. So vyavasayatmika buddhi is a clear understanding is one. A confused understanding is the opposite, is many, which is true. So, in regards to anything, when it comes to knowledge, you take any subject matter. So, the fact of the matter is one. There is one fact, unless it's a situation where so there are multiple opinions and things like that. But really speaking, when we are talking of facts, there is one fact which is in keeping with what is true, what is right. Then, if that is not there, what is the alternative? Once there is ignorance, there is confusion. Or if there is partial knowledge, doubts are there, lack of clarity is there. So then the possibilities increase. So there are many ways of thinking if you don't know the truth. Whereas if you know the truth, there is only one fact. So here he says in this particular matter, which is the matter of oneself, Atma, Anatma, etc., the spiritual pursuit that we are engaged in. We want to know the truth. Truth cannot be many. Truth has to be one. Errors can be many. It's always like that. So here the question is, what is it? Who decides? How do you decide what is right or what is wrong? So, because the more, especially in this particular spiritual pursuit, there are so as many opinions as there are people. Everyone has their own ideas. So, what is real? How do I figure this out? So, in this, so it's interesting that so here one has to do what is called as a little bit of so pramana vichara. Pramana means so what is it exactly that makes me believe something to be true? What are the different ways in which I get to know things? And what are the different ways by which I reach the conclusions? One has to know a little bit of that. Only then I can know whether what I'm thinking is right or wrong. So here, for us, usually, the primary means of knowledge is what is called as pratyaksham or sense perception. We have senses. The senses are directed outside and we perceive things. There is visual perception, there's auditory perception, there's olfactory perception. There are five senses. And through these five senses, we perceive the world. So when I look out and I see, so it's daylight. So I know it is daytime. Or I see some person, I know the person is there. That I see colors, I smell things, I hear things. So this is one means by which I come to know of things that are there outside. The other way, besides perception, is inferential. So inferential is, so based on some perception, I infer something. So for example, a traditional example is given, which if I see on the distant mountain top, I see smoke rising. And when I see smoke rising, then I look there and say, oh, there must be a fire. There's a fire on the hill, fire on the mountain. How did I say that? So that is knowledge. It's a clear knowledge. Even though I don't see a fire, there is no perception of fire. At the same time, I have a clear knowledge, I have a clear understanding. This is a vyavasayatmika buddhi. I have a clear understanding that there is fire there. How did I reach that conclusion? So because of inference. So the inference always is a multi-step process. Perceptual is direct perception. Inference is I have a perception. Based on the perception, I reach a conclusion. So my perception was that there is smoke on the hill. My perception was not fire, but my conclusion was there is fire. So because, why did I conclude that? Because wherever there is smoke, there is fire. This is something I heard. Somebody said one time, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Or I read it and I experienced it, and that I know to be true. Without fire, there cannot be smoke. So I see the smoke, even though I don't see the fire. I say there is fire. This is called as a simple conclusion. Anumanam. This pratyaksha and anumanam. Then there are certain other ways of also inferring things. This is one particular type of inference. There are other types of inference also. This is a technical differences. So, for example, I see a person, and then I see this person. He's on a fast. He's on a protest fasting. So in India they set up a little tent there, and he will sit there. He puts a cot, and supposedly he's sleeping there, and he's there all the time, 24 hours a day, and he's on a fast unto death, fast unto death. And so a few days go by, and then of course you look at this fellow every day while going to work, you notice him, and he seems to be hale and hearty and fine. And so nothing, he doesn't seem to be looking tired even, or looking weak, emaciated, nothing. In fact, he looks like he put on a little bit of weight. So here, if you look at that, and then the daytime, he doesn't eat. People are there, you check with other people, you come and check on him a few times a day, and you find that he's really not eating, and yet he's not losing any weight. So you make an inference. And what is your inference? That, well, this guy must be eating at night time. Eating at night time. So here there is no direct perception, there is no direct conclusion like in the smoke is to fire correlation is not there. But then here there is an indirect inference, right? Yeah, is this an assumption? This is what is called as a, so you make an assumption that he must be eating at night time because he is not losing any weight and so on. So this is another type of inference, or another way to reach a conclusion. Then called circumstantial. This is the circumstantial evidence. There's direct evidence, there is circumstantial evidence. Then there is what is called as a comparison. You compare things. So somebody describes to you an animal, and this animal you have never seen. a bison. You've never seen a bison growing up in India. You never saw a bison, but then somebody described it to you, and then this is an animal that looks like this, and it looks like a buffalo, and this is a little bit description you get, and then you come to this country, and then you see a bison, and then you suddenly realize, oh, this must be bison. Now, that is also knowledge. This is all knowledge. This is all definite knowledge, but the way you get to know is different. So directly or indirectly. So there are certain different matas, different philosophies, like for example logicians, and then Vaisheshikas and Mimamsakas and Vedantina, all these different people accept different combinations of these means of knowing. Pratyaksham is accepted by everybody. That's the primary. Perception is a primary means by which we know. And then there is inferentially, we also know based on perception. And then some of these are, so the technical differences between different types of inference, some people accept, some people don't accept them as independent means of knowledge. So, and then there is finally one called as a anupalabdhi, which is non-perception. So non-perception. So I'll say when I say look at the apple in my hand, if I tell you, and then you see, and when you see, then what kind of knowledge you get? You get the knowledge that there is no apple. There is no apple in my hand. This is your. I say, look at the apple in my hand. Suppose I tell you, and you look and you see an empty hand. So what is your? There's no perception. What is the perception here? There's no perception of an apple, correct? There's no perception of a apple, but there is an expectation of a perception of a apple. And then you conclude that there is no apple. You conclude the absence of something. Correct? You conclude the absence of an apple. Why did you conclude there was an absence of an apple? But there are so many things not there in my hand. Okay, there is no orange, there is no banana, there are millions of things are not there on my hand. But your conclusion was there is no apple in my hand, correct? So that had something to do, not direct directly with a perception, because there is no perception of anything, but there is some expectation that is set up in your mind, then that you don't see. So that's called a different type of a non-perception, or a perception of a non-object which you are expecting to see, but your conclusion is very definitive. So this is looked upon as another kind of a inference, another type of inference. Thus we have varieties of ways of inferring, and based on perception. Clear? There's no other way to know things, really speaking. And other interesting thing is each perception is its own proof. One perception doesn't prove another. One perception. So eyes, for example, if I want to see the color, eyes are my only means of knowing color. And when you look at, there was this thing on the internet recently about this dress. Did you read about the dress? So this dress, one picture is there, and with the stripes. And so some people saw it as black and white stripes. Some people saw it as some gold and blue. So some people look at that same picture and see gold and blue color stripes. So other people look at the same picture and see black and white stripes. Now, what is the truth here? What is the truth? So then I have to verify this. How am I going to verify? My eyes see what my eyes see. I cannot use ears to verify what my eyes are seeing. So the only way for me to verify is ask another person. Ask another person. So I see black and white, and I ask the other person, and he says, I see gold and blue. Now who's right and who's wrong? Really speaking, there's no way to tell. There's no way to tell. So Perception by itself is not a very definite means of knowing anything. Our perception makes a lot of mistakes. I perceive the sun rising and setting, but I know that the sun doesn't move with respect to the earth. So like that, there are any number of perceptions which do not necessarily are not factual, are not factual. Nevertheless, they are there. So this is one problem with perception. Another problem with perception is I can only perceive things which are outside of me. Outside of me, I have objects of my perception. Anything that is perceivable for me falls is an object of my perception, whether it is an object outside my physical body or whether it is my own thinking. So there is an external perceptions and I have internal perception, correct? I have internal perception. So my thinking is a internal perception. There is external perception, but there's always a subject. The one who perceives is the subject. I can never objectify the subject. If I objectify the subject, that means the one who's objectifying is the one who's the subject. So the subject can never become an object of perception by any means, either perceptually, either by external perception or by internal perception. So since the subject can never become an object of perception, it's not available for pratyaksha pramana. It's not available to be known, to know what it is for clear understanding in terms of a perception. Then can I conclude about the subject? Can I infer? So what is the nature of the subject, the me, the I? What am I? So can I infer about it? I really cannot infer because there is no perception. all inferences are based on perceptions. All inferences. So whether it is the smoke or whether it is this fellow eating, not eating, whether it is any comparison, whether it is not seeing something, whatever the way I have normally of inferring things, I cannot reach an inferential knowledge about the self because it is all of them being based on a perceptual knowledge, self not being available for perception. So then the question is, can the self be known? How am I going to get this clear understanding of the self? How am I going to get definitive knowledge? Is there another means? Is there another means to know? For me to know things, obviously, because the normal means by which I know things doesn't seem to be applicable here when it comes to self-knowledge. So what is this other means of knowing? So we recognize one other way of knowing, which is what is called as Shabdam or word. Word. Shabdam is word. Yeah. Which one? Shabda. Correct. Yeah. So, correct. So, Shabda. Shabda is a word. Shabda is a word. My sense organ doesn't recognize Shabdam actually. Doesn't recognize the word. Sense organ only recognizes sound. Okay. Suppose I speak to you in Chinese words. I speak words that are in Chinese. Correct? So, you don't understand anything. These are also words. Okay. So it is not word in itself. The words through their meanings, words are nothing but sounds which have meanings. So naturally, I have to hear it. I hear it, so they become the means of communicating something which is unknown to me. Okay. It is not a perception like a physical perception. It's not a physical perception, but the words can tell me about things. In I can hear a sound of music, and then I can conclude that there is somebody singing there. That is one kind of perception. But then words are when I'm using words, when I'm talking, and I'm using words. No doubt I hear the words, but then the knowledge that is conveyed to me through the words can be of anything. It's always, yeah. Where does knowledge takes place? Knowledge takes place in the mind alone. Knowledge always takes place in the psyche. Obviously, it doesn't take place in the body. Knowledge is not taking place in the physical body. It is taking place in my psyche or in my inner equipment, the mind, the intellect, the thing, whatever I have, my psyche, however, wherever it functions, that is where all knowledge takes place. That is where all the ignorance also is. Ignorance also, body is not ignorant of anything. My buddhi, my intellect is ignorant. I'm ignorant of things or I am knowledgeable about them. So, word becomes another means to know by virtue of, so some words pointing out to me certain things which I don't otherwise know. All learning is like that. All learning about things which I do not know. So whether it is finding out about some Hawaii, which I never heard of before, or some objects that I never heard of before, or some subject matter, etc. All this knowledge comes to me not through seeing or hearing things, but through listening to by through the words, listening about the subject matter, whatever the subject matter may be. So that way it is perceptual, but then it is not directly perceptual. It is because that way ignorance also can be perceptual. Because if somebody gives me wrong knowledge, then I don't know. That's not clear knowledge. Okay? But here, word becomes a means of knowledge, but words can also be means of error. So here it has to be words of somebody who knows. So through the words of somebody who knows. So whether which ends up becoming the scripture, really speaking. So here the subject matter being one, a certain kind of a subject matter that deals with self-knowledge, that becomes a scriptural thing. So the scripture becomes a means by of which by means becomes a means by which through the words the scripture reveals to me what the nature of the self is. Then it is something for me to recognize because self is there, the its nature is revealed. So if it is true, if what is being said is true, then that should become evident to me. It should become evident to me if it is a fact. Okay. So because facts have to be evident naturally. Anything that is factual, once it is pointed out, if I do not know, then that would become known to me. So thus, it is a knowledge, he says, therefore he talks about pramana janita viveka buddhi nimitta buddhi nimitta vashat. So this vyavasaya, the clear understanding here with reference to the self is born of a knowledge, not like any other way by which we know things, but it is born of a knowledge of a means, through a means which is by means of this pramana, a means of knowledge. So whatever is the means of knowledge that reveals to me the fact about what I am, who I am, that is called as pramana. That is, if the scripture reveals that to me about myself, that becomes the means of knowledge. If it doesn't, then it isn't. If it doesn't, it is. If there is some, if through the scripture obviously doesn't just come and talk to me. So somebody who has studied the scripture, so who's able to communicate that to me, then that person becomes the one who the teacher thereof. So who has studied and who is able to share what has been what they have come to understand. So that kind of a person is the one who is called as a teacher, from whom I am able to know. So thus he says this particular type of understanding with respect to the scriptural spiritual knowledge, which has to do with knowledge of myself. Whenever we talk about myself, it's always in connection with me, the world, and the cause thereof, cause of both. Okay. In other words, Bhagavan. So the cause of both is what we call as the Lord, that the source from which I have come, the source from which the universe has come. So that, and along with what I am, etc. So so the threefold things that are interconnected, this is all the subject matter, which is how I get the clear understanding of it, which there is no other way. There is no other way to know. So he says, for a vyavasayatmika buddhi, it is eka. It is a single fact. Fact of the matter is always one. But then he says, bahushakaha anantaha. Bahushaka means it's like varied, multiple. It's like many branches of a tree. There is only one trunk, and then like the branches are so many. If there is no clear understanding, and if there is confusion or partial understanding, then you reach varieties of conclusions, not just one. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschitaha vedavadaratav partha nanyadastiti vadinaha yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha vedavadarataha partha na anyad asti iti vadinaha. So he says yesham vyavasayatmika buddhihi nasti. So the people who do not have the clear understanding of what or who they are, of what the spiritual pursuit is. So who are they? That person is described here. So these are pravadanti. These are the people who speak. Avipaschitaha. Avipaschitaha are the people who are aviveki. Aviveki, who do not have viveka, who do not have the discrimination between what is right, what is wrong, what is finite, what is infinite, etc. So who do not have a discriminating mind, such people, they pushpitam vacham pravadanti. They speak flowery language naturally. So their language, if you want to sell a product, okay, so either your product stands on its own because of what it is, or suppose it is not up to the standard, suppose it is not good enough, then what do? Then in order to sell, you have to package it properly. You have to package it. The package has to be much more attractive than what the substance is. So which is exactly what happens here. So they say pushpitam vacham. They speak all kinds of flowery language. So like they say, empty vessels make more sound and things like that. If you, so I heard this, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, you baffle them with your, so I can't use the word here, I'm on YouTube, with your BS. So you can't dazzle them with you baffle them. With what? Nonsense. So this is what you do. If you know the thing, what you have to say, you say it. Person who knows always needs to speak few words to convey what they have to know. If you don't know, or if you're unsure, then you're going to go round and round and round about the bush. So he says such people who do not have viveka, he says, they speak flowery language. Veda vadarataha na anyadasti iti. So according to them, there's nothing else. Who are these people? So he's referring to a certain kind of person. They are Vedavada Rataha. Vedavada, he's saying they speak from the Vedas. Okay. They also speak from the Vedas. So, but just because they speak from the Veda doesn't mean that they. So, Veda, now we have to know. Now, what are you really telling here? Because Veda is scripture. You're saying to know the Atma also, you have to go to the scripture. Then, how can the scripture say things which are not so not correct? Not correct, obviously. So what the scripture, whatever it says, you can't have half the scripture saying one thing, the right thing, and half the scripture saying the wrong thing. But then here, so this is where it comes to interpretation. Either they misinterpret the scripture, what the scripture is saying, or they emphasize. So in a misinterpret, really speaking. So the scripture talks about two things fundamental. The Vedas. The Vedas talk about two things. So there are two. It can be divided into two sections, of which one is called as Karma Kanda and one is called as Jnana Kanda. So one section, the bigger section, the most of it talks about karmas, about prayers, rituals, and so on. And these are all centered on having to do things in order to gain various ends. So there are varieties of people there. All people have varieties of desires and wants. They are seeking all kinds of ends in life, and in order to help them achieve those ends, the Veda prescribes certain prayers, rituals, and so on. Okay. Why does it do that? Because helping, in order to help a person recognize that in life, besides you're doing things, there is also some other unknown factor is there. The divine factors are there. So in order to address the divine factors, you have to do all these other things also, which will facilitate you to get what you want in life. So all your limited ends, because we are seeking ends, really speaking. We don't know they are limited or not. We don't realize that. We seek them as though they are not limited. And we go about seeking our whole life, varieties of ends. We think that they're all going to be there forever. But nothing is there forever. But that's not how we relate to them. So the Veda does encourage us to go ahead and do things, but do it with a certain attitude, with a prayerful attitude. These are all the various karmas that the Veda talk about. But then the purpose of this is not to just find limited ends, but to help me realize eventually that I need to go past this. Okay, because this is not what is helping me. So to help me by a certain attitude, it helps me then grow by doing things with a prayerful attitude. It helps me grow. Just simply doing things without the prayerful attitude doesn't help me grow. So, in order to help me grow as a person, the Veda talks about a lot of things, rituals, prayers, to help me seek limited ends. But that is not the final goal of life. The final goal of life is to gain an end which is free from limitations, that will free me from all kinds of limitations. That end is also talked about by the Veda. Both the types of ends are discussed. But then these people who do not have proper discrimination, they only emphasize this portion. So they emphasize this portion. They are what they may be the karmatas or the laukikas, people who say, well, so whatever it is, this is how we have to live for the moment, etc., and do what you have to do. So by using all kinds of flowery language, they keep talking about this. Na anyat asti. And they say, other than that, there is no other end in life. Okay. There is nothing else to seek except you live. As long as you live, you seek, you enjoy, etc. So these are one type of people. He goes on to describe such a person. Kamatmana swargaparaha janma karma palapradam kriya vishesha bahulam Bhogaishvarya gatim prati kamatmanaha swargaparaha janma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishvarya gatim prati. So such people are kamatmanaha. Kamatmanaha means they are full of desires. They are full of, everybody is full of desires. They are also full of full of desires. Even desire the purpose, at least when the desire is fulfilled, then I should be content. But it never happens like that. It never happens. So desire, fulfillment of desires never leads to it's their cessation. It only fuel, that's why it says elsewhere it is said. So for a desire to be fulfilled, it is like it is like a fire, fulfillment of a desire is like adding fuel to the fire. It doesn't appease. Fuel never appeases the fire. So the people are full of desires. Swarga paraha, headed, their ultimate destination is what? Is the final vacation spot. The final vacation spot in heaven. So because heaven is always described as a place which is so much better than here. Whatever you miss out here is what, that's why the concepts of heaven also vary in different cultures. So different religions have different ideas of heaven based on whatever each one feels deprived of. Whatever you don't get here, you're going to get there. When we go there, we will have laddus and all that, those kinds of things. So not cakes and uh, croissants. So the heavens are described as what we like, what we see. So they are swarga paraha. That's the maximum. You don't realize that heaven also has its own issues. It's not, everything is not fine and dandy there. Plus, for us, swargam is also transient. It is not a permanent place. It's a vacation land. So they are headed for the heavens. Janma karma phala pradam. They talk about, so karma by doing all kinds of actions to gain all kinds of ends. What do you get out of it at the end of it? Well, they only say you get janma, karma, and phalam. You get results. So punyam and papam, both kinds of results are there, because I do all kinds of actions. I do different kinds of results I get. So in that, and which involve birth, so it only encourages ongoing birth, the cycle of birth and death, which is what is called as a samsara chakram. So fulfilling these mandates, even though there may be mandates that are indicated in the scripture, only keeps my samsara chakra keep going. Kriya Vishesha Bahulam. This talk which is full of, so kriyas of the rituals. So the scripture, the for me to achieve an end in life, okay, I have to do whatever I need to do. Suppose I want something, I want money, I want fame, I want education, whatever I need in life, I have to do certain things. Okay, so there is a known way to accomplish it, but there is also an unknown. There are unknown factors also sometimes. In spite of what I do, so things don't go my way. I put in the best effort and so on. Sometimes I miss the bus. So there are knowns and unknowns. The knowns I'm supposed to do. The unknown factors, which are the result of my own punya papam, which either facilitate things or sometimes cause obstacles, they are also addressed by, since being unknown, I don't know how to deal with them. So that is where the scriptures give me certain information or knowledge as to what I should do in the form of prayers and so on, in order to address those issues. So the scriptures, because desires are so many different types, my ways of doing things are so many different. Ends are so many. So the means also are different. So the scripture always provides varieties of rituals and prayers are said. So Bahulam, Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, Bhoga Ishwarya Gatim Prati. The ultimate end of all of this is what? So for enjoying. So different kinds of enjoyments, that objects that I seek, pleasures, those are the bhogas, and Aishwaryam. Aishwaryam is so power. Really speaking, what do people do? Why do we do what we do? It is really for these two main things. One is for enjoying pleasures, comforts and pleasures. Everybody wants everything that is good. And the other thing is, once you have, and then you don't know what else to really need, then you want power, really. Then you want to control other people. Then this is the two main guiding principle, the goals for most people. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam tayapahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau na vidiyate. So vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau na vidiyate does not take place. Na vidiyate. The what does not take place? This vyavasayatmika buddhi. So a mind, so which is a mind with clarity and understanding of the facts, this doesn't come by easily, or it doesn't come by to a person, doesn't happen in the mind of a person who is what? Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktana, the one who is attached, totally dedicated to, so just seeking pleasures, bhogas, and power. So anyone attached to just seeking comforts and power, such a person, Taya Apahrita Chetasam, the one who's carried away, whose mind is carried away by these limited ends, such a person cannot have a mind who is that is going to be, going to be tranquil and be able to be settled with with themselves. You can see that very easily. So a person gets so preoccupied. Power, etc., is something which is very addicting, It doesn't matter who it is. Anybody, once you get the taste of power, it is very, very difficult to not get sucked into it. And all kinds of powers, we all know that. Traigunya Visha Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastha Niryogakshema Atmavan Traigunya Vishayaha Vedaha Nistraigunyaha Bhava Arjuna, hey Arjuna, Nirdvandvaha Nitya Sattvastha Niryogakshema Atmavan. So he says this Vedaha, which is what he's talking about here. So the topic of the subject of the topic here is the Veda that has to do with karmas, rituals, the karma kanda portion, which is the most of the Vedas. He says these are Traigunya Vishayaha. They are centered on or constituted of these three gunas. Three gunas here is so sattva, rajas, and tamas. Why so? Because they're talking about the world. They're talking about the worldly pursuits, the worldly objects, etc. And so all this, when it comes to the world is a combination of these three gunas. Anything that is there in the manifest world, the Jagat, is constituted of how we categorize it that way. We categorize it in terms. There are three of these things we see. So the sattva, rajas, and tamas, depending on the context, it means slightly different things. Rajas basically refers to activities and actions and thinking, passion, etc. Then the tamas refers to inertia. So inertness, dullness, ignorance, darkness, those kinds of things. And then the sattva refers to the positive qualities, the virtues, the tranquility, consciousness, and so on. So this is what the world is constituted of. So he says, when my whole mind is engaged in this, what is called as pravritti margam, is engaged in a pursuit that is centered on the world, then it is centered on these three gunas, naturally. So he says these Vedas, when they talk about all these karmas and so on, they are centered on the three gunas. In other words, centered on the worldly pursuits. Whereas he says, what should you do? You become nistraigunyaha. You become. So in the sense, you learn to turn your attention away from this kind of a pursuit. This kind of a pursuit. So where your whole pursuit is centered on bhoga and aishwarya. See, even though here he is the king, he is set ready to fight the battle. He has to do that. That is, in a way, he has to regain his aishwarya, his kingdom, and whatever is the consequence of that. But yet, even though that is expected to do that, but internally, as a person, you don't do things with that as a goal. In life, we have to do what we have to do. But the question is, what is the motivating factor? What is it that motivates us to do what we do? You can do the same action with two different motives, he says. You can do, later on, he introduces this idea of likes and dislikes, raga dveshas. I can make my choices in life based on just what I like and what I don't like, or I can make choices based on what is right and wrong. So he says, you do what you have to do. You may end up doing the same thing at the end of it, but then it is the motive that makes a difference. And for you, instead of the motive being so centered on the world, you become nistraigunyaha. You detached yourself. Let that not be the motive. The motive has to be dharma, dharma, really, in this particular context for him. So you do what you have to do because that is the dharma, that is the right thing to do, not because of some other motivating factor. Finish that. So you Arjuna nistraigunyo bhava. And not only that, how nirdvandvaha. So in the process of withdrawing or shifting your motive, what do you have to do? You have to be nirdvandvaha. Dvandva is the opposites. So yeah, raga dveshas, likes and dislikes. So the likes and dislikes, you let that not be the motivating factor for you to do what you have to do. Nitya sattva staha, he says. So always, so be centered on here sattva. It's interesting. So already he says you be free from these three gunas. So what is this? Why is he asking him to now become centered on sattva? Here he is talking of sattva guna. So in terms of virtue, in terms of dharma, you still have to do. So as a karma, so you do it with the attitude of karma yoga, which he will introduce that whole idea as what is karma yoga here. So when you have to do things, let your motivating factor be sattva in nature. So that is what is going to help you. And nir yoga kshema, free from this being preoccupied with yoga and shema. Yoga means, so apraptasya upadanam is called as, no, anupatasya upadanam is called yoga. Yoga means getting something that I don't have, a gain of something that I'm seeking, that I want. That is called as yoga, gaining. And then, so then upatasya rakshanam. So then protecting, yeah. So there are two things. First of all, I don't have something, I want it. Once I have it, money is a big issue. So money, who doesn't? We need money. So I want money, and then I get money. The getting is okay as long as you get and spend it. It's okay. But suppose you get a lot. Once you start getting so more than you can spend, then you have to protect it. It becomes a bigger problem. Start you have to protect it from everybody, starting with uncle, starting with uncle and all the others people around you. So that's called as khema. So yoga and kshema go together. Once you gain, it's always nice to have things, but once you get them, then the problem is you have to protect it from other people also who want them. So, huh,
First, this was a mystery movement.
yeah,
Then again, it was kind of still describing the form
sattva. So when he first talks of nistraygunyam there the three guna refers to the nature of the world. So sattva, rajas, and tamas. So here the pravritti, there is a pravritti margam and nivritti margam. There are two paths. So pravritti is going towards something. So when I live in the world and interact with the world, and my whole interaction is centered on the world, that is called pravritti marg. So I am going towards. I am drawn towards the infinite world outside. Then there is a nivritti marga. Nivritti marga is turning away from the world to towards myself, towards inwards, towards the self. So one is turning outwards, one is turning inwards. So he says the outward world is, what is it constituted of? It is basically trigunatmika. Its nature is it is made up of these three gunas. So is my mind. So is my mind, so is my body, so is my intellect, so am I. Except for Atma. Except for Atma, everything else is so this threefold. Then but you withdraw from everything, he says. You become nistraygun. But how do I withdraw? My mind itself is made up of these three gunas. How do I withdraw? So he says the first step is you first have to become sattvastha. So you're between, you have to become sattva predominant. Okay.
So you have to withdraw by using one of those.
Exactly. Because Atma, it's not that the Atma is going to withdraw from anything. Atma doesn't, who's the one who's withdrawing after all? Who's withdrawing? I am withdrawing from the world. Not this, Atma is not withdrawing from anything. Atma is always unattached.
So the ego self.
So Atma is always unattached. I am the person who's a part of the world, really speaking. So I am as much made up of the three gunas as the world is made up of the three gunas. So when you ask me to withdraw from the world, who's withdrawing from whom? Is the Atma withdrawing from the world? Is the world withdrawing from the world? Who are you asking to withdraw? The self cannot withdraw from anything. That means I have to withdraw. I am also constituted of this threefold, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Even in terms of my psyche, it is all three. The question is what predominates? What predominates? Whatever it is that is directing me outside, in order to turn inwards, I have to make myself sattva predominant. Since I am a combination of all the three, once I making myself sattva predominant, that will help me detach from the world outside. Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu
सर्वेषु वेदेषु
ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः
ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः
यावान् अर्थ उदपाने सर्वतः संप्लुतोदके तावान् सर्वेषु vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. So here the question is, at least the world has so much to give me. I have a lot to give to the world. The world has so much to give me. And now if you ask me to withdraw, then what am I going to get at the end of it? So you're setting me up on a trip. I don't even know whether it really takes me anywhere or not. Am I going to lose anything? What will you get then at the end of the whole thing? For which he says, Yavan Artha Udapane. He says, Artha means here usefulness. So whatever you get from there is a small body of water. Udapana is a small body of water. So small body of water gives you something. Okay. Then you replace that with a whole big body of water. The big body of water. So surrounding this thing, whole thing floods over. Sometimes. So in the lake, you will have there are lakes in the ocean. There are lakes even in the ocean. So because there is a body of water which is of a different density than the rest of the water around it. Really, it's very interesting. So we think of ocean as a homogeneous thing, but there are areas in the ocean in this world where there are huge lakes, what they call as huge lakes, where it has a different kind of and it has its own body, it has its own border, it has its shore and everything like that. So he says, whatever you're going to get from the lake is you're going to get much more from the whole ocean. So this is like you're asking, what am I going to lose by getting away from the world? Whatever the world is going to give you, what you're going to get once you know yourself, he says, is way more than what the world is going to give you. That's like asking, what is that small lake going to give me when you have the whole ocean which is there around it for you? He says, Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanata. For the one who knows Brahman. So this is similar to saying, so what about all these things that Vedas are telling me to going to heaven and all that? At least Vedas promise me a heaven. Heaven sounds like a very nice place to be in, and there are a lot of good times I'm going to have there. You're telling me that if I so Brahmanasya Vijanata means knowing Brahman. The one who knows Brahman is a Brahmana. So knowing Brahman, so you're saying then heaven also I won't have. Then what am I going to get? He's saying whatever little joy you're going to get in heaven, this is something which is going to be it's going to be just simply incorporated into the whole what you're going to get. You're not going to lose anything, in other words. Okay. So then, good. So at this point, then from here on, he then introduces. He already mentioned withdrawing, but he also mentioned you have to be sattvastaha. You have to gain this particular disposition, which is predominantly sattva. So for which, when you have to interact with the world, you have to change your attitude, change your motivation, which is what is called as karma yoga. In other words, so where in the next verse he introduces what is karma yoga. We'll see that next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Can you